Before dawn ever breaks over Mogadishu, the city already feels a weight. The air hangs heavy with salt from the Indian Ocean and dust kicked up by decades of movement, conflict, and survival. Rooftops crowd together like clenched teeth, alleyways twist without warning, and the sound of distant engines or barking dogs never fully fades. This is a city shaped by trade, by colonization, by civil war, and by resilience that refuses to disappear. To understand how the Rangers took the lead here, you have to begin long before helicopters thundered overhead or boots hit the pavement. You have to begin with a place that has known power shift hands again and again, and with people who learned to adapt to chaos long before foreign soldiers arrived. Mogadishu was once a coastal jewel, a hub of commerce where traders from Arabia, Persia, and Africa exchanged goods and ideas. Its whitewashed buildings and coral stone walls reflected centuries of layered history. But by the early 1990s, that past felt distant. Somalia's central government had collapsed, and with it went any illusion of stability. Clan militias carved the city into zones of control. Warlords ruled neighborhoods like feudal lords, collecting loyalty through fear, food, and force. Ordinary people navigated a daily gamble just to find water, bread, or safety. Famine followed violence, and violence fed on hunger. When the world finally looked toward Somalia, it did so through images of starving children and armed men silhouetted against burning streets. The United States did not come to Mogadishu seeking conquest. The mission, at least on paper, was humanitarian. Operation Restore Hope was meant to secure aid routes so food could reach the starving. Early deployments focused on logistics, patrols, and deterrence. But peacekeeping in a place without peace is never simple. As aid began flowing, so did resentment from those who profited from disorder. Mohammed Fairbold emerged as the most powerful warlord in the capital, his militia controlling key territory and resisting international forces. When UN peacekeepers were attacked and killed, the mission shifted. The goal narrowed. Aidid had to be captured. That shift is where the Rangers entered the story. The soldiers of the 75th Ranger Regiment were not strangers to danger. But Mogadishu was different. This was not a jungle or an open desert. This was a living city, dense and unpredictable, where the enemy did not wear uniforms and the battlefield had no clear edges. The Rangers trained for speed, precision, and shock. They were designed to hit hard, move fast, and leave before the enemy could react. Alongside Delta Force operators, they formed Task Force Ranger, an elite unit assembled for one purpose: find Aidid's leadership, grab them, and get out. In the weeks leading up to the mission that would define their legacy, the Rangers learned the streets by instinct rather than maps. They memorized landmarks that changed daily. A burned-out bus today might be a market tomorrow. Children could be messengers. Shopkeepers could be informants or spotters. Every window was a potential firing position. Every crowd could turn hostile in seconds. Yet life went on around them. Women hauled water. Men argued over prices. Calls to prayer echoed over the same streets where gunfire would soon erupt. The contrast was constant and unsettling. On October 3, 1993, the plan seemed straightforward. Intelligence indicated that Aidid's top lieutenants were meeting near the Olympic Hotel, a cluster of buildings deep in hostile territory. The Rangers would fast-stroke from helicopters, secure the perimeter, and Delta operators would capture the targets. Convoys of Humvees and trucks would extract everyone within an hour. It was meant to be quick, almost routine by the standards of Task Force Ranger. But Mogadishu does not reward assumptions. As the helicopters roared in, dust and debris spiraled into the air, announcing their arrival to the entire neighborhood. Rangers slid down ropes onto streets that erupted with noise and movement. Some Somalis ran, others grabbed weapons. The sound of rotor blades blended with shouted commands and the crack of gunfire. Within minutes, the operation began to fracture. Somali militia, far more numerous and better organized than expected, flooded toward the site. Rocket-propelled grenades streaked through the air, crude but devastating. When the first Black Hawk helicopter fell from the sky, the mission changed instantly. A plume of smoke rose above the city, visible for miles. The Rangers were no longer just raiding. They were fighting to survive. This is where leadership mattered most, and where the Rangers began to take the lead not just tactically, but morally and emotionally. Junior leaders, sergeants barely into their 20s, made life or death decisions without hesitation. They reorganized units under fire, redirected movement, and held intersections against waves of attackers. Training took over where plans failed. Discipline replaced confusion. Every ranger knew the rule: no one gets left behind. The streets of Mogadishu closed in. Alleyways became funnels of fire. Militiamen fired from rooftops, windows, behind walls that blended into the city's bones. Civilians were everywhere, caught between fear and fury. The Rangers had to fight while trying not to lose themselves in the chaos, distinguishing threats from bystanders in split seconds. Some moments were brutally clear. Others were agonizingly ambiguous. When a second helicopter went down, the situation turned desperate. The crash site lay even deeper in hostile territory. Delta snipers Gary Gordon and Randy Sugar requested permission to be inserted to defend the wounded crew. They knew the odds. They went anyway. Their stand became legend, not because of how it ended, but because of why they chose to act. Courage in Mogadishu was not abstract. It was physical, immediate, and final. As night fell, Mogadishu transformed. Darkness offered cover to attackers and confusion to defenders. Tracer rounds cut red lines through the blackness. Fires burned unchecked. The Rangers and Delta operators hunkered down in buildings, low on ammunition, tending to the wounded with whatever supplies they had. Radio traffic crackled with urgency, voices strained but steady. Outside, the city seemed to press closer, alive with movement and sound. Inside those besieged positions, leadership was not about rank. It was about calm under pressure, about a steady voice telling others what to do next. Rangers rotated positions, redistributed ammo, and kept watch even as exhaustion set in. Some had been hit and refused evacuation. Others dragged wounded comrades through streets slick with blood and debris. Every action carried weight. Every mistake could be fatal. The relief convoy that eventually fought its way in was a patchwork of American, Malaysian, and Pakistani forces. Coordination was difficult, communication imperfect, but the shared goal was clear: get the men out. The exfiltration became a grinding push through hostile streets, vehicles disabled, soldiers dismounting to fight on foot. Rangers ran alongside armored vehicles, returning fire, guiding the wounded. The infamous Mogadishu Mile was not a sprint of heroics, but a measured, relentless movement born of necessity. By the time the survivors reached safety, the cost was undeniable. 18 American soldiers were dead. Hundreds of Somalis had been killed, many of them fighters, some of them civilians. Images of a fallen American being dragged through the streets flashed across the world, searing themselves into public memory. For many, Mogadishu became shorthand for failure, for overreach, for the limits of intervention. But that is not how the Rangers remember it. For them, Mogadishu was about accountability, about showing up for each other when everything went wrong, about young men discovering, in the harshest way possible, what leadership truly means. The Rangers took the lead not because they sought glory, but because circumstances demanded it. They held lines when they should have collapsed. They made decisions without perfect information. They carried the weight of loss long after the dust settled. The aftermath reshaped American foreign policy and military doctrine. The United States withdrew from Somalia months later. Future interventions would be weighed against the shadow of Mogadishu. Equipment, tactics, and training evolved. Better armor, improved communications, a deeper understanding of urban warfare. But no lesson was more enduring than the human one. Technology cannot replace trust, and plans cannot substitute for leadership when reality intervenes. In Mogadishu itself, life went on. The city absorbed the battle as it had absorbed so many others. Buildings were repaired or abandoned. Streets returned to commerce and conflict in equal measure. Children who watched helicopters fall grew into adults shaped by memories of the day. For them, the battle was not a chapter in a foreign history book. It was something that happened outside their homes. For the Rangers, Mogadishu became a quiet reference point, spoken of with a mix of pride and pain. Reunions carried empty seats. Names were remembered. Lessons were passed down to new generations who trained for missions they hoped would never resemble that one. The ethos endured. Never quit. Never leave a fallen comrade. Lead when leadership is needed, regardless of title. When you walk the streets of Mogadishu today, you can still feel echoes if you know where to listen. In the way buildings huddle together. In the wary eyes of people who have seen too much. In the understanding that cities remember violence even when they move forward. The Rangers came and went in a matter of hours. But the imprint of the day lingers, not just in history books or military manuals, but in the shared memory of a place and a unit forever changed. Because in the heart of a city defined by uncertainty, leadership was not something announced or assigned. It was something earned in the dust, the noise, and the darkness, one decision at a time.